So if you're new to development, there are a lot of challenges when you first get started. A lot of that is just working through particular projects, trying to get your environment set up, just understanding the overall infrastructure of the front end, and, you know, really trying to put yourself out there to really code and try to solve these problems as quickly as possible. But as you start working on these problems, things are going to get very complex. It's going to get harder to understand the code, especially like if there's tech debt involved, where the code hasn't been updated in years or months, and you're trying to understand exactly what's going on, and it's just a lot of weird code going on, essentially. So, as a new developer, you're going to run into these challenges. You're going to run into trying to, figure out things on your own, and you're going to have that ego to where you're not going to reach out to someone that knows more than you, at least on the team, just to kind of get yourself familiar with how things are done. So I got a couple mistakes for you new developers to look out for, and don't take it to heart. Do a self-reflection in terms of what is important, so you're not going down this path to where you're not getting things done, you're getting frustrated, and you're just overall done with software development. All right. So number one is you're not asking enough questions. You have to ask questions. When you first start something, you don't know the answer to it, or you're trying to figure out a solution to a problem, and it's taking you a long time to get to that answer, ask someone on the team that knows more than you. Point blank, period. The more questions that you ask, the easier things will be, and the more context you will have to address the problem. I used to be a big believer into just figuring out everything on my own and not having to worry about reaching out to someone for more context. Once I changed my mindset on that and just started asking more questions, I started getting more answers to those questions, and actually had a better blueprint in terms of what I needed to do next. And there's nothing wrong with asking questions. It doesn't mean that you're incompetent. It doesn't mean that you don't know what you're doing. If you're new, you're new. All right. So get that out of your head that you have to figure out everything, because at the end of the day, if you ask questions to the right people on your team, then the more easier it will get for you to finish out the things that you need to do, or provide valuable feedback in terms of what the team should do next, or how to improve productivity. Just get into the habit of asking questions if you don't know something, and notice how much more you're going to get done. All right. Number two, the mistake I see is just ignoring the fundamentals. Why are you ignoring the fundamentals? The fundamentals is what got you in the door anyway. So why are you just branching off into doing your own thing and thinking that you can get things done in your own way? If you stick to the fundamentals, that should be the blueprint to getting whatever you need to get done more effectively. And just relying on frameworks to do the job, relying on AI to do the job, you're going to have a lot of bad code in your code base, and it's not going to be good. I mean, there's going to be a lot of cleanup work. It's going to be a lot of guessing in terms of what the workflow is. Now, I'm not saying that AI is going to do this all the time, but you have to understand that AI can hallucinate. It could give you the wrong answer. I've seen it multiple times with ChatGPT. Even GitHub Copilot has given me wrong answers before. So I implore you guys to not rely on those frameworks and those libraries. I mean, having a strong foundation on the fundamentals is going to take you way further than, just guessing at that point. Number three is just writing messy code. Whenever I read code that's like done by a junior, it's like, how did you come up with this solution? And how is this code working? And we've all been there, especially the developers that have more experience. You're going to write bad code. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but you're going to notice that once you start to progress and you start to understand, the flow of how code is written in your project, you go back to a file that you wrote a couple months back. You're going to be like, who wrote this? You're going to look at it and be embarrassed about the code that you wrote. But this is a good thing. This shows that you are growing as a developer. This is what you want to do. This is what you want to see. Writing bad code is going to happen. It's not going to be perfect. The first time you write code to solve a problem, it's going to solve that problem. But then as time goes on and the more you learn, you go back to that particular area of the code that needs to get updated with a new feature. you're gonna notice that it needs to be refreshed, and you're gonna have a better mindset on how to refactor things and make things more efficient. And especially if you guys have a coding standard, if you follow that coding standard, then the code that you wrote before is gonna be easy enough to transition into that new way of writing code and make it easier for everybody else on the team. Writing messy code in the beginning, like I said, is not a big deal, but if you don't learn from those mistakes, you will always stay at the same level you are at. Number 4, the mistake that I see is not being able to use Git. This is very important, okay? If you are a developer, you're gonna be using Git in some way, whether that's just creating a branch, a local branch, so that the project works in your environment. And then you would just make your code changes. And then once you're done and you have all your changes there, what's next? How do you push those changes to like the environment, the QA environment or the production environment? Say, for example, if you were to cherry pick your commits, that happens sometimes. You have to understand cherry picking. What I would do is just create a separate branch from the main branch that I'm working on, have my change in that branch, and just create a pull request to the QA branch, and then have someone peer review it. And then also you guys need to get familiar with pull requests. It's just a request that lists all the changes for a project, or at least what you're working on, all the modifications and all that. And it allows another developer to review those changes and make sure that it's fit enough to go into the QA branch. Once you understand how to create a pull request, how to assign someone to that pull request and actually get valuable feedback from that, you can make changes to your code so that it adheres to standards or fix an issue that a developer found. This is very important. Make sure that you understand Git as much as possible, how to cherry pick your commits, how to create branches off of a main branch locally so you can run your project and work on your changes. If you have changes, how do you go about stashing those changes if you were to work on another branch? Because sometimes there's conflicts if you already have modified changes. How do you go about stashing your changes so that it doesn't conflict with another branch? Also, merge conflicts happens too. So if you're not regularly pulling down the latest changes from a branch that you're working off of, you could potentially run into merge conflicts, depending on how many changes are done actively every single day. So if you can't work through merge conflicts, that's going to be a huge issue, because you could essentially put a release at risk because the changes are not good. So if you just accept all the merge conflicts and not understanding the code entirely of what needs to be done, what is the most recent code versus the code that needs to be changed, you could run into a potential issue where the project just doesn't work. So always make sure that whenever you're dealing with a merge conflict and you don't know exactly what the code changes are, reach out to someone that actually made some changes to that, and you should be fine. I use Git Lens to understand the history of a file change. So like if it's something that I don't know and I see the author of who made that commit, I could just reach out to that person and we can look at the merge conflicts together. You can also use Git log too to understand, the commit history as well. And the last mistake that I see is, you're not learning to debug properly. Debugging is essential to programming. If you cannot debug an issue, you will not make it as a developer. So there's many different ways to debug an issue. You could, if you're working on a web app, right, using React or Next.js on a front end, you could spin up your environment and use the console log to understand what's going on with data that's being returned from the back end, understand errors that are showing up. Usually I would use the developer tools in Chrome and actually look at any errors that comes in through the console. That's very essential to understand what's going on. If you don't know how to use developer tools, that's 101 the essentials for being a front-end developer. You could set breakpoints for your project as well. So what I essentially like to do if I'm trying to work on a workflow, and I don't understand necessarily what's going on there, I will set a breakpoint in one of the lines of the code and just make sure that I initiate that workflow and then it steps through what's going on. And if you don't like debugging, this is not for you. Point blank, period. And debugging will help you learn as much as you can about the code and actually provide a better sense in terms of what needs to be done so that this doesn't happen again, just to make your code more efficient. So that's it, guys. That's the video. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Let me know if these 5 mistakes will help you in your coding journey. And if you need any help from me, you could reach out to me directly at thefullstackbro@gmail.com. If you want me to review your resume, your portfolio, you have any general questions around what you should do next in your career, just reach out. We could set up a 30-minute call, go through your pain points, and try to create actionable steps to get you where you need to be. We'll talk soon.